They'll always preach honesty. Tell you to open up, bare your soul, let people see the real you, raw, transparent, vulnerable. But what they conveniently leave out is this: the second you start putting your inner world on display without a filter, someone out there is already watching. Already taking mental notes. And if Machiavelli were here, he'd know exactly what they're studying. Not your strengths. Not your courage. But your pressure points, your soft spots, your emotional reflexes, the places they can push when it's time to bend you. See, it's not always the wrongdoings with bad intentions that sink you. Often, it's the sincere missteps. The honest overshares. The confessions you offered in trust, thinking they made you real, when really they made you exposed. Predictable. Easy to read. Easy to play. That's the contradiction Machiavelli would dissect with ruthless clarity. He saw what most people still don't: your biggest vulnerability isn't your secret, it's your belief that it's safe to reveal it. And that belief? It's strongest when you're being honest. So let's peel back the first layer of this trap. It's the most celebrated, most encouraged, and yet the most silently weaponized: oversharing your struggles. We live in an era that romanticizes vulnerability. Post your pain, they say. Leaders are taught to broadcast their failures to seem relatable. And sure, you'll get likes, praise, applause for your raw openness. But Machiavelli would have side-eyed that advice. He knew, when you show people how you bleed, you're also teaching them exactly where to stab. This isn't about shame. It's about control. The issue isn't whether you can share your pain. It's whether you're doing it with intention, or just handing it out to anyone who happens to be listening. The dangerous assumption is that every person hearing your truth is hearing it with compassion. That authenticity will automatically win you respect. But power doesn't bend to sincerity. It doesn't bloom in confession. It thrives in mystery. So when you reveal your wounds to the wrong people, be it coworkers, casual friends, even so-called allies, you're doing two things. You kill your mystique. And you arm others with quiet ammunition. Because no matter how kindly they respond, they're storing that information. And the moment you step into confidence, they'll already know which story to whisper to pull you back down. Machiavelli would have handled vulnerability like he would a nation's secrets. Deliberately. Sharply. With surgical timing. You don't share the pain while it's fresh. You share it after you've mastered it. After it's no longer a wound, but a scar you own. Because in the game of power, unprocessed pain isn't intimacy, it's exposure. Want to earn respect? Don't tell them how you're still bleeding. Tell them how you bled, and still walked through fire. Now on to the second trap. One that looks like a virtue but leaves you wide open, assuming other people care about fairness as much as you do. You try to do the right thing. You compromise. You give people the benefit of the doubt. You believe that by acting in good faith, they'll meet you in the middle. That's idealistic. And also dangerous. Because as Machiavelli would say, you're assuming they're playing your game. That they see the world through your moral lens. The honest mistake is thinking fairness is universal. That if you show integrity, others will mirror it. But the cold reality? Some people don't see fairness as strength. They see it as weakness. They see you back down and think, he won't fight. She'll crumble under pressure. They don't see compassion. They see leverage. And at that point, they've got a read on you. You've shown your hand. And you've made yourself easier to maneuver. Now, Machiavelli didn't reject fairness. He just understood its limits. He knew when to give and when to guard. He never handed out trust. It had to be earned through action, consistency, and pressure. So here's the move: stop leading with fairness. Lead with awareness. Don't walk in with an open offer. Watch first. Let them move. Let them reveal who they really are. And once you know the game they're playing, then, and only then, do you decide whether to offer your principles or your strategy. That doesn't make you heartless. It makes you calculated. Because Machiavelli's law wasn't be fair. It was understand the rules of the game and know who you're playing against. Now comes the third honest mistake. The one that doesn't just hurt you, it trains your enemies on how to manipulate you. Reacting emotionally to subtle provocations. Not explosive anger. Not visible breakdowns. Just slight signs. A shift in posture. A clenched jaw. A defensive tone. You start explaining yourself. Justifying. Proving you're right. And it feels reasonable, natural even. You're just expressing how you feel, right? But here's the Machiavellian breakdown: you just showed them they can move you. That you're reactive. They now know exactly which nerve to touch to make you flinch. And to someone even mildly manipulative? That's gold. They'll use it. And you'll never see it coming. Machiavelli would teach you to wear a mask, not to hide emotion, but to master it. Not to repress, but to redirect. You don't kill your feelings. You delay their broadcast. So when someone tries to rattle you, you don't respond with words. You respond with silence. A pause. A subtle breath. A half smile. Not because you're unaffected, but because now they're unsure whether they even touched you. That's power. Silence buys you time. Time gives you composure. And with composure, you control the field. Because in that stillness, you flip the emotional script. You make it a game of strategy, not feelings. And now they're guessing, not pressing. Here's what ties all three mistakes together: you don't lose power from being evil. You lose it from being good, in the wrong places, in front of the wrong people. From showing honesty without filters. Kindness without boundaries. Machiavelli wouldn't tell you to lie. He'd tell you to protect your truth. To be selective. Intentional. Precise. Because power doesn't go to the cruel, it goes to the careful. And the ones who believe their honesty makes them untouchable? They're usually the first to be taken apart, word by word. Here's the brutal truth: the world doesn't reward sincerity. It examines it. It watches where you flinch. It takes notes on your tone, your hesitations, your emotional leaks. And every time you lead with rawness, you hand out pieces of your map. And once they know your terrain, your triggers, your stories, your instincts, mystery dies. Danger disappears. And what's left? Familiarity. Predictability. And that breeds dismissal. That's why Machiavelli feared not the enemies with weapons, but the ones who listen too well. The ones who smile while you explain. Who nod while you talk yourself into exposure. Who let you hand them the very rope they'll use to pull your power away. So let's go deeper into how these honest errors spread. How they quietly rewrite your status without you realizing it. It starts with something subtle, but powerful: your language of self-doubt. You hear it in the small disclaimers. I might be wrong, but this could sound dumb. I don't really know much, but... These phrases seem humble. Polite even. But to a Machiavellian thinker, they scream something louder: this person hasn't owned their authority yet. And in a room full of sharks, that's all they need to know. Because every disclaimer, every softener, broadcasts the same message. You don't have to take me seriously. And it doesn't matter how brilliant your message is, if you wrap it in hesitation, people will treat it like background noise. That's what Machiavelli meant when he said men judge more by what they see than by what is truly felt. In other words, they won't analyze your insight. They'll pick up on your uncertainty. And they'll echo it right back. So how do you fix it? You cut the preamble. You speak with clarity, not arrogance. With calm conviction. You let your words land without begging for approval. You make space for respect by showing that you respect your own voice first. And when someone pushes back against your ideas, you don't get rattled. You don't go on the defensive. Instead, you lean in with calm curiosity. You ask things like, "What makes you say that?" Or, "That's interesting, what would you suggest instead?" Or even better, "Why don't we test both approaches and see which one actually works?" Just like that, you've flipped the script. You're no longer the one justifying yourself, they are. You've moved them from critic to co-creator. And that move alone sets you apart from the average. That's not brute strength, that's strategic framing. That's Machiavellian precision. Now let's go deeper. There's a second layer to this same mistake, and it's even more subtle because it looks like self-awareness. It shows up when you casually point out your own flaws, not because anyone demanded it, but because you think it makes you look grounded. You say things like, "I know I talk too much," or "I tend to overthink everything," or "I'm not great with people." And maybe you think you're being honest, maybe even humble. But what you're actually doing is handing your enemies a ready-made script. Because later on, when they want to disqualify you, all they need to do is quote you. "She said herself she's not great with people. I don't think she's fit for this role. He admitted he gets defensive under pressure. Can we really trust him in a crisis?" They told me they overthink everything. Maybe they're not cut out for fast decisions. You gave them the blade. They just waited for the right moment to twist it. Machiavelli wouldn't hide his weaknesses, but he never let someone else narrate them better than he could. That's the key. So instead of labeling yourself in ways that diminish you, you reframe. Don't say, I overthink. Say, I prefer to think things through thoroughly before making a move. Don't say, I'm not great with people. Say, I'm intentional about where I invest my energy. Don't say, I'm too sensitive. Say, I have a strong sense for emotional nuance. I often pick up on what others miss. That's not spin. That's strategic self-definition. That's owning the story before someone else weaponizes it. Because the battlefield isn't just physical, it's linguistic. And if you don't define who you are, someone else will. Now let's bring this into even sharper focus with the deadliest version of this mistake: being emotionally readable in hostile environments. You're in a meeting. Someone throws a jab disguised as a joke. It hits a nerve. You feel it, the warmth rising to your face, the tension in your chest, the instinct to explain or defend. Maybe you speak faster. Maybe you go quiet. Either way, your reaction shows. And worse, the person who triggered it? They see it worked. Machiavelli would be ruthless in his warning here. If they can read your emotions, they can steer your behavior. You've become a puppet, your reactions are the strings. And the cruelest part is, they won't just use it in that moment. They'll save it. They'll wait. And they'll strike when it costs you most. So what's the antidote? You train yourself to be deliberately unreadable. You let emotional tension move through you like wind through tall grass, seen, but untouched. You hold still. You observe. You breathe. You respond with calm, not urgency. Not because you don't feel, but because you've learned to control when and how you show it. You don't grow colder. You grow slower. More intentional. More exact. Because in a world addicted to instant emotional reactions, the person who delays their response becomes powerful. Even feared. That's Machiavelli's way, not hiding, not shrinking, but disciplining your emotional exposure until every word, every look, every vulnerability becomes a calculated move, not a leak. Because honesty isn't the enemy, undisciplined honesty is. That's how you hand your power over to someone who's been watching and waiting for just that opportunity. There's a type of silence that changes the whole room. It's not anger. It's not fear. It's not coldness. It's mystery. That sense that people can't quite read you, but they know they should be paying more attention. That's the energy Machiavelli mastered. Not through lies, but by making sure no one could map him completely. And in today's world, obsessed with full transparency, true power comes from protecting the parts of yourself others are desperate to understand, so they can exploit them. That's the battleground no one sees coming. A world where being too visible makes you vulnerable. And your enemies don't need a weapon, just information. They don't need to hurt you. They just need to observe. The things you reveal when you're trying to be honest. The shifts in your expression when you're challenged. The words you use when you're feeling uncertain or trying to win someone over. It's not the liar who gets crushed. It's the person who is too genuine, too soon, in the wrong setting. Let's lift the curtain on another trap, one of the most tempting, over-explaining your intentions. You take a bold step. You do something unexpected. And suddenly, you feel the urge to justify. I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to help. I only said that because I care. You think you're preserving your character. But Machiavelli would say you're weakening your position. Here's the law: the one who over-explains signals guilt. And guilt becomes the story people latch onto. Even if you meant well, once you start defending your motives, you're no longer leading, you're reacting. You've put yourself on trial without anyone asking. You've flipped the balance of power. Machiavelli wouldn't waste a second trying to convince others of his goodness, especially those who were already skeptical. He'd remind you, perception is leverage. And the moment you try to control it by explaining yourself, you've handed that leverage to someone else. So what do you do instead? You let your actions speak. Let the chips fall. If someone is offended by your boundaries, let them be. If they confuse your confidence with arrogance, let them sit with that discomfort. If they question your distance, you don't explain, you state. I've just started moving differently. Period. No further explanation. And when they press you on a decision, You say, I didn't do it to be understood. I did it because it was necessary. You stay inside your own frame. You don't step into theirs. That's not coldness, it's strategic poise. That's psychological chess. Now for another common mistake disguised as warmth, giving people access too quickly. You meet someone new. They seem genuine. Their energy feels good. They listen. They nod. And suddenly you find yourself telling them about your goals, your fears, your backstory. You've let them in, but you haven't tested them. That's the moment Machiavelli would say you just gave away the vault key. Because access isn't neutral, it's a resource. And when you hand it over freely, people don't see it as kindness. They see it as lack of discretion. They start to wonder, if I got in this easily, who else is in here? They don't feel special. They feel strategic. They feel like they just stumbled upon the blueprint to your emotional operating system. Machiavelli's method? Test before you trust. Reveal after you watch. He would drop tiny pieces of personal truth, not to connect but to measure. If someone misused it, repeated it, twisted it, that was all the proof he needed. But if they handled it with care, with silence, with loyalty, then, and only then, would the door crack open a little more. That's the calibration. Never mistake warmth for loyalty. Because loyalty isn't about how someone treats you when you're watching. It's about what they do when you're not in the room. It's not just how people treat you when you're around, it's how they protect your name when you're not in the room. Now let's talk about the third and perhaps most seductive mistake of all. It's raw. It's human. And it's quietly destructive. Trusting someone too quickly, just because they've shared their pain. They sit across from you and tell a heavy story. Something about their childhood. Their trauma. A deep fear or personal failure. And something inside you shifts. You think, they've been through a lot, they must be genuine. You start believing they get it. That they get you. But here's what Machiavelli would whisper: pain doesn't make someone noble. It just makes them experienced. And experience is neutral, it's a tool. It can heal, or it can harm. The honest mistake is assuming depth equals safety. That someone with scars must be trustworthy. But the truth is, scars don't guarantee integrity. Some of the most dangerous people are the ones who've mastered the language of vulnerability. They know exactly how to sound broken, so you drop your guard first. They say the right things. They look the part. They play the misunderstood outsider to perfection. Machiavelli wouldn't dismiss suffering. He'd just warn you to ask better questions. Before you trust them, watch how they treat others, especially the ones who can no longer offer them anything. Pay attention to how they handle disagreement. What they do when they think no one's watching. That's where their true character shows. Because power doesn't come from guessing people's intentions. It comes from seeing through them. And if you let your guard down just because someone bleeds beautifully, you're not being compassionate. You're being marked. Here's the warning: your kindness, your clarity, your realness, these are not flaws. They're assets. But only when protected. When left exposed, they don't make you relatable. They make you vulnerable. In a world governed by perception and psychological warfare, Machiavelli would remind you of one cold truth: openness isn't the same as strength. The strongest fortresses? You don't even know you haven't entered them. There's a reason kings build walls, not just to keep invaders out, but to force everyone who approaches to reveal their intentions first. Machiavelli believed in walls. Not physical ones. Psychological ones. Made of silence. Of ambiguity. Of unanswered questions. Because the moment people think they fully understand you, they stop respecting you. They stop being careful. They start predicting. Controlling. Using. And they won't even need bad intentions to do it. You've made yourself navigable. Predictable. Easy to play. That's the true tragedy behind these honest mistakes. They look noble. They feel authentic. But in a world where no one carries a sword anymore, your destruction doesn't come from violence, it comes from interpretation. So the question becomes, how do you fix all of this, without becoming cold, robotic, or closed off? You build what Machiavelli would call your strategic self. You stop treating honesty as a reflex, and you start treating it like a precision tool. You still tell the truth, but not the whole truth, and not to everyone. You still connect with people, but you learn to pace it, to test before trusting. You still feel deeply, But you train yourself to decide when those feelings come to the surface, and when they remain your own. That's where real power lies. Not in suppression, but in placement. Let's put this into practice. You're in a conversation. Someone starts getting personal. They're opening up fast, digging deep, asking questions that hit your inner world before you've even built trust. The average person responds with equal vulnerability. It's polite, right? But the Machiavellian mind knows better. Intimacy is not trust. It's just data until tested. So instead of handing them real ammunition, you offer a controlled truth. A surface-level detail that sounds open but gives nothing away. I'm terrible with names. I moved around a lot as a kid. I can never finish a TV series. These aren't lies. But they're deliberately non-threatening truths. They satisfy social norms while keeping your core self protected. Why does this matter? Because the one who reveals the least holds the most power. Mystery isn't just magnetic, it's armor. When people don't know how you're built, they can't figure out where to press. Now picture a different scene. You're in a room, and someone's testing you. Interrupting you mid-sentence. Undermining your ideas with backhanded praise. Wow, you've really improved! Like you were once below them. Your instinct is to call it out. Confront them. The Machiavellian move? Reframe, without retaliating. You meet their eyes. You offer a small smile. And you say, "It's funny. I've noticed people usually talk like that when they're a little off balance." You didn't insult them. You didn't raise your voice. But the tone in the room shifts. The tension belongs to them now. That's psychological control. Not through force, but through composed clarity. You become unpredictable. Not volatile. Not chaotic. But unreadable in a way that makes people tread carefully. And in any power dynamic, hesitation is a form of submission. Let's take another example. Someone tries to drag you into gossip. They're venting about someone else. They want your opinion. What they're really doing? Testing your alignment. They want to see if you'll take the bait. If you'll say something they can quote later. Your move? Ask a question. That's interesting. What do you think their real motive is? I wonder how many people let them get away with that. Now you are the one gathering intel. You're not feeding the fire. You're collecting sparks. Quietly. Strategically. Because Machiavelli lived by a simple principle. The one who knows the most, and says the least, stays in power the longest. And no, this doesn't mean you stop trusting altogether. It just means you stop trusting quickly. You stop assuming people are as moral as you. You stop thinking that good stories equal good character. You stop giving away your truth like it's free. Because it's not. Your truth is a high-value currency. And it should cost something. Time. Proof. Pattern recognition. Consistency under pressure. Not just warmth and a sob story. When you operate like this, when you reserve your emotional capital, you become rare. And where there's rarity, there's value. And where there's value, respect follows. That's what Machiavelli would want you to understand. You don't have to be fake. You don't have to be cruel. You just have to stop being free. Free with your stories. Free with your reactions. Free with your access. Because once you stop making those honest mistakes, you don't just gain respect, you become untouchable. And your enemies? They'll still try to study you. Still try to test you. But now they're playing a game they can't win. Because the player across the table? He stopped giving them the rulebook.